When it comes to the soy siblings, we get a glimpse into what sort of cuisines and what sort of foods that they might like. And with this event being all about Yu, who is a chef, I think it is a pretty good time to talk about what sort of cuisines might be behind the soy siblings' preferences and how the soy siblings might relate to Chinese cuisine in real life. So, in this video, let's take a quick little trip through Chinese food via the soy siblings. Last year's event, Hero People Sows, focused around agriculture and representing Shu's powers, which is a good starting point for our quick trip through Chinese cuisine. Many Chinese culinary traditions were developed generations ago, well before modern preservation and logistics enabled us humans to be able to access the entire world as our pantry. Thus, the food that you could cook was with the ingredients you could grow or raise nearby, dictated by the geography and climate of your region. One of the most notable examples of how geography and climate influence the cuisines of people can be seen with the North-South China culinary divide. Roughly splitting China along the Yangtze River provides the two distinct climates that greatly influenced what could be grown, particularly grains. In the north, a colder and drier climate meant a shorter growing period, leading to wheat becoming the predominant staple food in the northern regions, as it was easier to grow. The vastness of the North's arable land also meant that despite being less productive than rice per hectare, there was more land for more wheat to be grown. The wheat would be made into flour, giving us many of the wheat-based dishes that we associate with Chinese cuisine: noodles, steamed buns, and pancakes. Some specific dishes include 肉夹馍, Chinese hamburgers, 馒头, and the infamous character stroke hell of biang biang mian. The South, on the other hand, is almost the exact opposite. A warm, wet climate is paired with breathtaking yet rugged terrain. Overcoming the land constraints with its high productivity and perfectly at home with the more tropical climate, rice became the staple grain of the southern regions. It would be mostly eaten by itself, cooked till it was soft and fluffy. However, there is still a variety of other ways to prepare rice to make it a bit more exciting. Boil it into a porridge, and you get a base of many different types of congee, such as century egg congee, 排蛋早有粥. Turn it into a flour, and you can make noodles, such as 贵州羊肉粉, goat rice noodle soup. As grains are typically the staple crop of many cultures, they are one of the clear examples of how geography and climate influences the cuisines of people. However, other ingredients are also reflective of China's north-south culinary divide. For example, the cold of the north not only limited the kinds of vegetables that could be grown, but it was also less of a priority to include vegetables within the diet than, say, hearty carbs from wheat that would keep you going through the cold seasons. Contrast that with the South that did not have the same environmental constraints, and there were more incorporation of a variety of vegetables within dishes in the South. And yet, despite not having the same variety of ingredients, the North overcomes the monotony within its cuisine through technique rather than ingredients. See the Shanxi province and the different types of noodles that can be found. As stated previously, the South found itself perfect for the cultivation of grains, vegetables, and fruits of all kinds. And it's with a few southern regions in China that a particular fruit was cultivated and first used as an ingredient for their cuisines: chili peppers. Our first soy sibling that we were introduced to, Nian, has a very apparent love for spicy foods, to the disdain of those who wish to have a meal with her. Spicy chili peppers are actually not native to China, and instead were introduced to the area around the 16th century, where they were initially viewed more as a novel garden plant rather than a cooking ingredient. It is believed that in the late 17th to early 18th century, that the people of the Guizhou province first consumed spicy chili peppers. From then on, hot spiciness has developed into three notable categories within the cuisines of three southern provinces. The Hunan province is known for being 干辣, dry and spicy, using a wide variety of fresh chilies that are incorporated as garnishes or meant to be eaten within a variety of stir-fried dishes. Mao Zedong, a native of the Hunan province, allegedly joked, "You can't be a revolutionary if you don't eat chilies." A classic dish of Hunan's 干辣 philosophy is 小炒肉, chili fried pork, a dish that absolutely pairs fantastically with rice. The Guizhou province distinguishes itself with incorporating spiciness with sour flavors. The province's affinity for fermented vegetables is paired with spice to create dishes such as xuantang, sour soup, a broth hailing from the ethnic Miao people, used in hot pot bases or stewing fish, like with xuantangji, fermented tomato catfish soup. Deviating from the spicy and sour, Guizhou is also known for popularizing another spice, particularly outside of China. The story goes that there was a woman who was running a noodle shop in Guiyang, hometown repping, and noticed that her customers came not for her noodles, but rather her chili oil. She decided instead to just sell the chili oil, becoming the internationally renowned brand Laogama. Chili oil is incredibly versatile within many Chinese cuisines, being both an ingredient and a condiment that I would argue even surpasses ketchup in its use case. But if you were to mention spicy in Chinese food, for most, there's one province that stands above them all: Sichuan. The Sichuan province rivals Cantonese and perhaps a bit of Beijing and Shanghai cuisine for being the poster child of Chinese cuisine internationally. Sichuan's position of abundant natural resources led it to be able to develop a deep cooking culture, further driven by strong local culinary associations in the 1980s. The cuisine features bold flavors, often accompanied by spice that is on a spectrum, ranging from the more milder 回锅肉, twice-cooked pork, to the nian levels of absurdity in 辣子鸡, Sichuan spicy chicken. Similar to how Hunan has its dry and spicy, and Guizhou has its sour and spicy, Sichuan's subclass is spicy and numbing, or 麻辣. The uniqueness of this province's spice is due to the Sichuan pepper, huazhao, that gives the cuisine its numbing effect, giving us the ultimate Sichuan classic, mapo tofu. In contrast to Nian's love for spiciness and the Sichuan province's affinity for bold flavors, Dusk, on the other hand, prefers milder flavors. Nian describes Dusk's preferred food as tasteless and boring, but it might be more fair to describe her preferred food as more balanced in flavor. In Chinese cooking, salt is a flavor that is easily added to a dish by not just adding salt. For example, soy sauce, which is used to add in a umami flavor and color, contains a fair bit of salt. Or MSG, which is also used to add in a umami flavor, contains a fair bit of salt by itself. In order to balance out the salt in these dishes, sugar is added. The sugar also pairs very well with another common flavor across Chinese cuisines, sour, and is used to balance this out as well. The Jiangsu province, which Dusk reflects, are no strangers to sweetness in their savory dishes, featuring dishes such as tangshu paigu, sweet and sour spare ribs, or hongshao rou, red braised pork belly, which gets its vibrant red color from the caramelized rock sugar that is added. The sweet and sour flavor has also spread across the country, even in places that may have not utilized much sugar within their cooking. In the north, which used to describe the cuisine of the Yangtze River Delta region as too sweet, saw the creation of guobao rou, crispy sweet and sour pork, by the Qing dynasty to accommodate the tastes of foreigners in Harbin. In the south, a similar story of developing dishes to suit foreigners of the Guangdong province led to the creation of gulaoyok, sweet and sour pork, a Cantonese classic that would become a staple Chinese takeaway in other countries. Even Sichuan knows when to tone down its salt and spiciness and harness the power of sweet and sour with gongbao jiding, or kung pao chicken, another classic of Chinese restaurants outside of China. So perhaps it isn't that Dusk doesn't have any taste in flavorful food, but rather she may have a bit of a sweet tooth instead. Ling's affinity with alcohol reflects a long relation between China and alcohol, with evidence suggesting that alcoholic beverages were being consumed 9,000 years ago during the Neolithic period. Alcohol would be brewed from a multitude of grains. Millet, wheat, rice, and sorghum would be used to produce traditional huangjiu and baijiu. Modern beers were introduced by German and Russian brewers, establishing themselves within China in the cities of Qingdao and Harbin. It was the Tang Dynasty where alcohol was truly embraced. The golden age of Imperial Chinese civilization featured scholars who socialized through drinking, all while engaging in other activities such as playing musical instruments, calligraphy, painting, or reciting poetry. The drunken poet was not just limited to Ling, of course. In fact, many classical poets were associated with drinking wine. Most notably, Li Bai, one of the most famous classical poets in Chinese history, was renowned for his references to wine in his poems. He, along with his fellow scholars in Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, were known as the Eight Immortals of the Wine Cup. Interestingly, the Chinese word 醉, within modern-day translation, means drunk. Yet within Chinese poetry, 醉 is used with a more positive connotation than what we might associate with being drunk. The modern-day scholar James J.Y. Liu describes it as, quote, being mentally carried away from one's normal preoccupations. It was a way to experience something beyond the mortal realm. Even though the golden days of alcohol in China during the Tang Dynasty are long past, it still remains an integral part of food culture. Just as the scholars of the 8th century socialized over alcohol, alcoholic drinks are often consumed during social meals. Whether it is the bottle of Maotai Baijiu gifted during a large family gathering, or a couple of good friends out at midnight pairing street food with a couple of Qingtao beers, drinking is a communal affair. When we think of how Chinese food is cooked, I'm sure many of us will instantly default to the image of a flaming wok with ingredients tossed around. It is also what seems to be Yu's primary means of preparing dishes. Stir-frying evolved from the use of woks for drying grain in the Han Dynasty and roasting tea leaves in the Tang Dynasty during the Song Dynasty, where it was actually used for cooking food. However, it wasn't until the Ming Dynasty that stir-frying became popularized. This is due to stir-frying's ability to quickly cook food as cooking fuel was becoming more expensive within urban areas at the time. This legacy of quick hot food continues to define most stir-fried dishes, being the go-to for quick and delicious meals. Tomato egg stir-fry is a dish that is an incredibly simple yet comforting dish that is a great introduction to stir-fried dishes over rice. The wok is not just limited to stir-frying though. Within many kitchens, the wok is also pressed into service to steam dishes where steamer baskets are just placed on top of the wok, partially filled with water. While perhaps a bit underrated compared to the appealing flames of stir-frying, steaming is integral to a wide variety of Chinese cuisines, being the method of cooking for some of China's most recognizable foods, such as the famed Shanghai xiaolongbao, or Cantonese dim sum classics like shumai. And there's no way one can talk about Chinese cooking without mentioning hot pot, 火锅. Hot pot is a method of cooking where usually multiple people gather around a large pot filled with broth or a hot pot base. Prepared raw ingredients such as thinly sliced pieces of meat, meatballs, tofu, vegetables, or mushrooms are then put into the hot pot by the individuals who cook the ingredients themselves and then retrieve it from the pot to eat. Hot pot is shared amongst many different cuisines within China in some form. Each region may have their own variation to hot pot, whether it be the cooking vessel, the broth flavor, or the ingredients to the hot pot. But overall, the fundamental concept of hot pot is shared amongst many different cuisines in China, including the community aspect of it. While hot pot can be eaten alone, it usually isn't. Rather than just being a meal, hot pot is closely tied with the experience of being with friends and family, being able to cook that meal alongside with them in the same pot. We bond over our shared need for food, and how our cultures have developed it for thousands of years into something that's beyond a necessity.